The part that you played is the way that you responded internally and the way that you've allowed it to fester pridefully. It could be that you expected something without understanding the full gamut. Even if it's a very minute part, the exercise is an exercise in humility nonetheless. What do we say, family? Welcome to Complexity, a little podcast where we take seemingly complex matters and we attempt to make them plain and simple. My name is Sammy Foster, joined with the one and only Boots.
Hello there.
Hi, friend. All right, let's go.
Let's get into it.
Today we're talking about relationship conflict.
Ooh,
and how to resolve it. Are you good at resolving conflict?
I've gotten better.
I bet you have.
I would say I'm okay.
What's the training ground for relationship conflict?
What do you mean?
Where do you learn to resolve conflict?
In relationship
Yes.
with Hannah.
There you go.
Is that what you mean?
That's. I mean, is that what sort of cultivated your expertise?
I wouldn't say expertise, but I would say experience has been garnered through my relationship with her.
Absolutely.
More so than, I've always thought that I had like close friendships and whatnot. I've had one-off spats and whatnot with friends, but for the most part, I thought I was a pretty agreeable guy, and then I realized I was actually very, very sensitive and easily conflicted.
Yes.
And so I've had to resolve those.
Totally. Yeah, I think when we talk about relationship conflict, there is a certain portion of our audience that to engage conflict, to engage dysfunction and or an offense had or committed. For some, it's like the bane of their existence. Like they couldn't think of anything worse than having to resolve the tension. For some, they're just very comfortable in it. I would say, no matter if you're comfortable in it, because you're comfortable in engaging conflict doesn't mean that you're good at it.
Yeah. It just might mean that you're blunt.
Yes.
And
you can, have crucial conversations and you're not afraid of awkwardness.
Yeah, but you don't do them well.
Exactly. Because some people that really think they're good at engaging conflicts are just arrogant. Yeah. And they're just like, I'm just going to address it head on and tell them how I feel.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make you good at it. That just makes you not afraid of it. Where in fact, maybe you should be a little more afraid.
Yeah.
But the reason I think that you and I are engaging this conversation is because what we have, the foreground of the conversation is that what we've determined is in present day, because we've, I think largely due to social media and digital relationships, virtual relationships, quick texting, loss of nuance, all of this type of stuff, people have become a lot more unintellectual in relationships than we used to be.
So emotional intelligence.
Well said.
EQ has dropped.
Yes, our emotional EQ has dropped. And so what we do now is we just cancel.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do that. You can just unfollow, block them, etc.
Exactly. Not text them, not call them, not, hey, your relationship wasn't that personal and or physical, if you will, to begin with. So now you just leave them on red.
Yeah.
So now we don't engage the art of conflict resolution. We just cut them off. And I know I'm broad brushing there, but it does. That avenue is much more feasible now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
One and two. What has happened is that we have lost the art of conflict resolution because we don't understand the steps of it. But for those that are followers of Jesus, relationships should be of the utmost priority, and the dealing with the conflict that's inevitable should be something that we take seriously. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll say this. I come into it with, I got all kinds of facets in my paradigm when it comes to people that have conflict, because in the church world, this gets really weird. It can get a little weird in that, especially being a pastor of a church. So you can imagine a lot of people come to Lighthouse. A lot of people will leave Lighthouse. It's just the nature of the beast. Wish it wasn't so, but hey, I'm a realist. That said, it's always been curious to me that we will say, we love to throw the word around in Christian circles, churches, communities like that. We're family. Mm-hmm. We're family. Part of the family of God. Part of the family of this church. Mm-hmm. Love my family. Okay.
#family.
#family. And then they get offended. Then something happens they don't like. Then they have a disagreement. Then they get, limited information about something. They jump to a conclusion, project, yada, yada, yada. Get it. Hey, I'm a people, so I get it. I'm tempted to do it. But then all of a sudden, they leave the family. Nobody knows about it. They only complain about the family or some of the leaders within the family or people at the family on their way amidst departing the family, mm-hmm. not having any conversation
with the family.
with said family. It's like, wait a minute. And then this is a little niche issue, but I'll bring it up, that we're in vain. They'll go to another family. They'll go to another family, and then they'll take shots at the previous family, right? Forgetting and neglecting, we're going to spend eternity together.
Because we are a family.
Because we are family, remember? Hey, as if we're now at war with one another. We're churches aren't gangs.
Yeah.
Churches are just outposts of one family. You can consider them like houses, mm-hmm. All part of the same neighborhood. So it is near and dear to me that we learn how to resolve conflict. Now, I just spoke by and large about church and family and leadership and, that vein of community. But conflict happens everywhere. Conflict happens husband and wife. Conflict happens parentally, mom, dad, sons, daughters. Conflict happens in the context of immediate family and extended family. Come on, somebody. Conflict happens by way of work relationships. Beck and I never have conflict.
Never.
That's because I'm by and large agreeable.
Yeah.
Conflict happens over social media. Oh, people love that. People love this. Social media is like the conflict itch that you can scratch, because all you got to do is sit down and keyboard warrior, let somebody know how you really feel.
It's the road rage of the internet.
It's the road rage of the World Wide Web, information highway.
Because you're in your own little box and you can yell at somebody,
right?
Send, and you're gone.
Totally. And then you don't even have to respond if you don't want. That's like a real, checkmate.
Yeah. Ratioed.
Totally. You got workplace, co-worker conflict, yada, yada, yada. And so conflict resolution, I think it's really, really something else. Really impressive when I meet somebody and watch somebody engage conflict well.
Got a recent example of that? Without getting into particulars.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I watched, actually, it had to pertain to social media.
Huh.
Okay? Social media. I watched this gentleman, he made a post. Very blunt post, very sort of dogmatic, to a degree arrogant post. Well, what happened as a result of that is naturally, as you can imagine, he took a lot of criticism for his post. Wrongfully, his criticism became his badge of honor. Like, because he was so arrogant in his post that that he just held his ground. And he was like, you know what? I'm right, you're wrong. This is how I feel. This is the way I see it, yada, yada, yada. The problem is that those that criticized him, they did it in the same degree of dogmatism and arrogance that it just sort of invoked more arrogance within him. And so he held his ground. And so I'm watching it, and I knew this person, and I thought, and I'm being a little dramatic, but I'm making my point. Okay, let me inflate it just a little bit. I watched it and I thought, okay, and then I had received some back channel, so and so.
Did you see this?
Exactly. So I sat on it just for a minute, and I thought, I don't know how this is going to go, because this, there's a lot of fury now that had ensued. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I'm gonna give it a whirl. So shot a quick text, said, hey, give me a holler. I wanna talk to you about this. But what I did is I added the clip to said post. And I was like, hey, FYI.
This is what it's about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they knew.
Yeah.
Okay. So he or she responded back and said, okay, well, let's engage it. And I could tell, sort of, kind of, they were a little half-cocked, like, to begin with, like, come
defensive,
at me.
yeah.
And I just laid out, hey, here's what you said. Here's why it's wrong. Here's what you want to consider. Here's where I'm sensitive. Making it sound like I handled this perfectly. And I did.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
I'm just kidding. JK. Humility, remember?
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Come on. And then this starts a conflict.
Yeah.
Arrogant individual. And when I did that, this person just in the most beautiful way humbled themselves, owned where they went wrong, itemized it clearly, saw it, then said what they would do about it, and then actually planned the means of reconciliation for those that he offended in the midst of it. It was so beautiful. It was so, but yet it wasn't like he just laid down and was like, all right, I'm wrong, and, hey, yada, yada, yada. But actually, thoughtfully and intellectually and relationally was like engaged me and said, hey, really appreciate that. I see that. And hey, now I'm gonna do this about that. It was a really beautiful resolution to what had a lot of foreground of conflict and hurt feelings, and it had a really beautiful outcome.
Yeah.
I guess
this is all over the phone?
This is all over the phone, yeah, totally. Not a face-to-face. One of the things that I've often said, that I watched my father, if I had to sort of have a go-to as to what was the model of conflict resolution, my father really fleshed and walked that out for me. I watched him engage crucial conversations. And the reason I keep referring to crucial conversations, that's a Patrick Lancioni.
Yeah, I can't help you there.
Lancioni, I believe, is his last name. He wrote a book called Crucial Conversations, where he talked about conflict resolutions, particularly in the context of the workspace. But I watched my father engage crucial conversations, and then I watched people engage him, because he would always say things that were offensive, terribly untimely, and things like that. And so people would come to him, and I just watched him in humility really engage people, validate what they said, make them feel appreciated for their boldness to come to him, own it, and then he would sometimes do things about it that were really visible. And I thought, man, that's really beautiful. And then there were times he'd just say sorry and then talk about you behind your back. So, it wasn't like he was totally perfect.
Yeah.
So lest I paint him in a picture like he crushed it every single time. Sometimes his pride got involved and he was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to have to eviscerate you. But he would come back around and say, hey, I'm so sorry. Anyway, that's the foreground of this conversation.
Yeah. So we've pointed out that it's necessary. Conflict resolution is necessary, but it all starts with the point of tension, which would be the conflict itself.
Totally.
What would you say would be the common themes of what causes these conflicts before we engage with how to properly resolve them?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Thanks.
So the question is, what would cause them? What is the foreground? That as great of a question as it is, it's far too general, because you can't distill it down to one thing.
Yeah.
But I would say that there are common elements that find themselves in all conflict. And I think the go-to is James in his book, James, the brother of Jesus, James chapter 4, beginning in verse 1. He asks this question, and he says, what causes fights and quarrels in and among you, aka conflict? Mm-hmm. What causes conflict? And then he says this, is it not the desires that rage within you? He then says, you want, but you don't have. You ask, and you don't receive. And you wind up envying them for having what you want. Mm-hmm. It's pretty interesting. That's a little curious. Wait a minute. He just said fights and quarrels in and among people are a result of something inside of them, not just an offense that happened outside of them. It's really an internal thing.
Yeah.
And you want something, but you're not getting it. You ask for something, you don't receive it. And so then you envy those that have it. And then he continues on, but that would only add to more confusion. I think you got to deal with that. Essentially, what James would say in a degree of essence is he says that all frustration is a result of unmet expectation.
Yeah.
You thought you'd get something, you didn't get it, and it causes a rage within you that then comes out of you. So let me just do this. This is going to be a little off, but Becca, keep us between the rails. Let's talk husbands, wives. Husbands, wives. Here we go. Little marriage class 101. I would love to tell you I've mastered this, have not. I'm working on it. We're in this together. Women have three fundamentals in them. This is a common counsel of mine, that are non-negotiables. They have to have these things. These aren't suggestive and or optional. These are created, they're intrinsic, designed by God to require these things. this actually could create a little conflict. But bear with me. Women need three things, and they're the three S's: safety, security, stability. They got to feel safe. They got to feel like, and we've talked about this in episodes past, so this is not.
It was a long time ago, though. I want to say that was that Red Flags, like episode 2 or something?
Whoa.
I'd tell you to go back, but probably
What
shouldn't.
episode is this? This is like 60 what?
65, I think.
65.
Or 67. This
We're a
one's 7.
long way from home, aren't we, Bobby?
We are.
Safety, security, stability. That means that a woman wants to feel, in the context of her marriage relationship, I'm safe. I'm safe because he is, women will project on men, rightfully so. You're a protector, you're a provider, you're a stabilizer. But I got to feel safe. I got to feel safe that, hey, if the strong man comes to the door, you're not kicking me out of bed saying, go see who it is. I got to feel safe that I can trust you and that there's a degree of your bandwidth given to the well-being of our home. I got to feel safe in your presence. Got to feel safe. There's got to be safety. Security. There's got to feel a sense of security, that there's a predictability about your comings and goings, and that your word is integrity, and that there's the ground beneath her feet is solid, and that she's not always second guessing. And then lastly, stability, which is in the same vein, that what I see is what I'm getting, and that you create for us and our family a sense of stability and longevity, and that you're thinking not for your immediate wants and impulses, but what's the best for our well-being as well. Safety, security, and stability. That's intrinsic. Men, let's talk about the dudes. It'd be good to have a lady here, but we do. So
Yeah,
you can
thanks.
chime in back. You're a voice in this. You got a mic. Okay, so men need that. Men deeply want to feel understood.
That's right.
Freaking right. Men want to feel understood. That means they want to be listened to. Check it out. I know men aren't the talkers. They don't want to come home and, talk. But men do want to be listened to. They want to be understood of what they're carrying and what they're enduring and the pressure, points in them and demand signal in their life. They want to, and they got dreams and aspirations. Men are a lot more soft than we give them credit for. It's just got to get unearthed a little bit. Men want to be understood. Secondly, they want to be appreciated. They want to be appreciated for what they do, how they contribute, things that they've done. They don't want to be their own cheerleader. Men are far more insecure than they would ever tell you, but they want to be appreciated. They want to hear their wife tell them, "Daggone, babe, I think the sun rises and sets where you walk, and I see how hard you're working. I see what you did with the kids. I see how you built that. I see what you've been doing, in the quiet when nobody's looking, and I just want you to know I so appreciate you." It goes a long way. Thirdly, men want to feel respected. This is why, we've said it before, men will meet another dude and they'll be like, "What do you do?"
Yep.
You're sizing up. You're sizing up. It's you're just trying to figure out, what we often say, our worth is not found in what we do, but men, they have a different economy. Their economy is,
Their worth is found in what they do.
you said it.
Yeah.
Okay, so women, safety, security, stability. Men, they want to be understood, appreciated, and respected. Okay. That said, that's the in them. Okay, so let's go back James 4.
That's the expectation.
That's the expectation. James 4. When a woman does not feel secure and or safe and or stable, she will manifest that. She will manifest that sometimes in the right ways, sometimes in the wrong ways. Married 24 years now, I know when Ruth doesn't feel safe. I know when she feels like my schedule's gotten away from me. It's running me. I'm not running it. She doesn't know. She thinks that I'm thinking more about my own priorities than the priorities of the household, things like that. Ruth will manifest Ruth will get very vocal.
Without the crystals, hopefully.
without the crystals. Starts wearing necklaces and rubbing neck crystals. She will get very vocal in a way that then feels like I'm not appreciated.
Oh.
Or I'm not respected, or she doesn't understand me. I'm carrying a demand signal on me, and that, man, it's rough. Or if I don't feel those, I'll get vocal too, or
Which threatens her security, safety,
100%. Where do fights and quarrels happen among you? Is it not the desires and/or expectations that rage within you? So when it happens in the context of a relationship, typically maritally, you can many times root it back to a deficit in one of those areas that got interpreted, that then responded to, that creates conflict. Okay? I know I just did that in a very sort of like matter of fact, but I understand there are all kinds of nuances to that and all kinds of ingredients. I'm just giving a fundamental. When it comes to the same in the conflict of a work relationship, you said something that disrespected me, and I interpret it a certain way. And so now what I either am left to do is I'm either going to cancel you and not talk to you anymore. I'm just going to block you and leave you on red or whatever. Or I'm going to respond in another arrogant way. I'm going to go tit for tat with that. Okay. Oh, you want to bow up on me? Roger. We can dance. I'll do this all day long. And then you're a long way. You don't even know what started the conflict.
Yeah.
You just have a wrecked relationship that, hey, years will ensue. I have sat with families that something was said over the Thanksgiving table in 2002. And here we are 20 years later, and because it was never dealt with, these cats sit around with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. And nobody, actually, all they do is look through a lens that is like dark, it's skewed. And they dread that holiday, all because they never dealt with, addressed, talked about the offense. They just responded in the same sinful, arrogant manner that they received the offense in. And it's all rooted in an expectation. You disrespected me. You were insensitive to me. You did something that created insecurity in me. On and on and on. It can happen. That's why social media is so dangerous, because it lacks nuance. You just lob a bomb, nuke the whole situation.
Yeah.
You have no vested interest other than what's your fingers tight, and now you set a forest fire in motion. And it's all because you responded with either a deficit or a feeling of what was raging within you. And so, and then it's way too awkward for people to go, I got to resolve this conflict, or I got to take them to dinner and sit down and talk about it. I got to call them. And people are more apt to go, no.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Right.
It's not worth the discomfort.
Right.
And I feel like so much of what you just described of like the perceived deficiencies in one of those areas, whether I felt disrespected or I feel unsafe now because of X, Y, and Z. The funny thing is so much of that can come simply through misunderstanding.
So true.
And
so true.
I was thinking, there's a couple of examples of this that come to mind for me. And like sometimes we think we're immune to misunderstanding. Just how easy it is. There's this traffic light near my house, and it's one of those annoying situations where most of the people who pull up to this stoplight, they want to go straight.
Okay.
But it'll present an option to turn left. And sometimes the like left arrow will come on, but the go forward green will not come on alongside it.
Okay.
So you have a line of people sitting at this light, getting ready to go. They want to go straight.
Okay.
But then there's another guy 3 cars back. He wants to turn left. And so when he's sitting there, they're all waiting. The left turn light comes on. So the guy 3 cars back is like, go! You're missing the light.
God.
I want to turn left. Come on, turn left already.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
So good.
Whereas the guy sitting and this has been me before, for the record, sitting there, I don't want to turn left, buddy.
Yeah.
I want to go straight.
Right.
But it's so easy because though I've been the guy sitting at the light wanting to go straight,
Yeah.
I've also been the guy sitting at the light wanting to turn left.
Okay.
And it's like, go man, come on, turn.
Yeah.
But why is that? It's because I'm so fixated on what I'm thinking.
Really good,
It
man.
is so easy to misunderstand, what someone else is thinking or what someone else's intention is. They never wanted to turn left anyway. They weren't trying. They're not paying attention. I'm just
Right.
projecting that onto them because of my own motivations.
Absolutely.
It's just crazy.
And we do a lot. You're so right, man. I think that is such a culprit for conflict that we are constantly projecting out of our own paradigm what somebody's intentions are, what they meant by that, why they didn't do that, why they said that. We are constantly giving perspective out of our own expectation.
Yep.
Like the old adage, we judge others by their actions and we judge ourselves by our intentions.
Yep.
And it makes a really skewed paradigm on life. I saw this lady the other day. She passed me on the shoulder. I was waiting to get on the Route 50, and she passed me on the shoulder. And it was like a car that I recognized. It was a car that I recognized, but I certainly assumed it wasn't the person.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I mean, the arrogance, man, that you think you're just going to jump in line and yada, yada, yada. Later on that day, I was talking to a friend in Annapolis that said that his fiance found out that her father, who was in the hospital, went into cardiac arrest. And she was, that car is whose car I thought, oh, they got the same car. But I assumed it wasn't her car. You following me?
Yep.
And I passed quick judgment on
Just trying to cut the line.
ignorant,
Yep.
and she was trying to get to the hospital. And how many times have we talked about, you don't know what they're doing, you don't know where they're going, you don't know what they're carrying. Yeah. I've had that conversation a million times. Yet that morning, I didn't even think of that. And lo and behold, that stereotypical scenario turned out to be totally true.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what was happening while I was like, because I perceived out of my expectations. So what do? We just blow up the relationship and walk away.
Cancel them.
Cancel them, block them, unfollow. If you like this podcast, go ahead and... All right, so we're going to take some steps.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah. Can I offer one preemptive step real quick?
You certainly can.
Because what we're talking about is going to be dealing with the conflict, but perhaps one thing that we can do to help mitigate some of the things on the front end, because offense is going to happen.
Totally.
However, if you're easily offended, it's going to happen more often.
Totally.
And that's one of the things that I'm finding, as you asked about at the beginning, my training grounds for relationship conflict. I'm easily offended by Hannah. Like we deal with these things, but that's an internal problem of my own insecurities coming out. I need to deal with those things. Yes, I want to deal with the actual conflicts, but like if I can almost boost my offendedness immune system, like if I can increase certain things that'll reduce the likelihood of me getting offended or getting sick, I need to do those things. And I feel like those things involve what we've talked about before, which is humility and gratitude and other immune boosting things. But obviously, even if you're not easily offended, you will get offended at some point.
No doubt.
And we're about to delve into this. But I just feel like that's worth saying. Like,
right.
If this is something that you find happening a lot, maybe deal with some of those internal things as well.
Identify the pattern.
Yep.
You could be woefully or too easily offended. You could be in relationship with a very offensive person. That certainly is not the case with Hannah.
I am not.
Hannah, we love you. You are certainly the better of the half. Okay, here we go.
You didn't need to say that.
Don't be offended.
Though I agree. Yeah.
Colossians 3 says this, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. The question there is, what does it mean to bear? What does it mean to be a bear? To bear with someone in this very offensive and offended world where conflict will naturally happen. If you are one that finds yourself in a conflict or you have caused a conflict, I'm going to give you some steps. They are extremely rudimentary and elementary, but a reminder is good nonetheless. Number one, initiate. Just initiate. So take the first step. Resolve, I'm going to do something about it. We're not even talking about what to do, but just poise as, I'm going to initiate this. I'm going to make the phone call. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to send a text. I'm going to, when I see them on such and such a day, I'm going to walk into their office tomorrow. I'm going to initiate. I know it's daunting. I would love to tell you that, you know, here at Lighthouse, there's 40 plus staff, and one of our values is authenticity and honesty, of where I'm a big proponent of candor. I feel like it's incumbent upon me to initiate a lot, to just, otherwise I'm terrible if I get in my crawl and just stew on. I will think down. I am not one that will think giving the benefit of the doubt. It's just my MO. So initiation is really important for me.
Yeah, catch it early.
Yep. Number two, after you initiate, hear me on this, ask God for wisdom. Just really say, Lord, you got to give me wisdom here, and give me a heart bigger than my own. Give me a perspective wider than my scope, and help me see what my pride would cause me to be blind to. Give me wisdom. Give me the words to say. Give me the heart to receive. Give me the humility to even go, maybe I contributed in some way. Ask God for wisdom, and hear me, as we say often around here, that contrite and humble heart of saying, I don't want to go at it on my own, really is a magnet for the grace and wisdom of God to go, hey, I'm gonna give you a paradigm that maybe you were blind to. Number three, consider your part. I think this should be a given, but many people's paradigm, it's not. There is always a part that you contributed. And for some, I know that would hear this, that would go, nope, I didn't contribute anything at all. Nothing at all. I was the innocent bystander on the receiving end of somebody's hurtful, offensive, egregious action and or words. Hear me. That might be true. The part that you played is the way that you responded internally and the way that you've allowed it to fester pridefully. It could be that you expected something without understanding the full gamut. Even if it's a very minute part, the exercise is an exercise in humility nonetheless. Just to go, what was my part? Even if it's a small part, it's still a beautiful contribution to the conflict resolution.
You think you lead with that?
Oh, you can't lose by doing that. Just to say, because it creates a tone of, hey, first and foremost, I wanted to talk to you because something happened. Something was said, hey, and I've been sort of jacked up inside. Here's the deal. I want to say this from the onset. I did you wrong because I've had ill thoughts about you. There's a lot of things I'd like to say to you that wouldn't be right. Hey, I even told somebody and painted you in a bad light. I just want you to know I played a part in this. Man, that neutralizes the playing field. Can't lose.
Unless they go, what'd you say?
Yeah, and then you're like, well, I made a Facebook post about it. Yeah, I mean, and if you did, well, then that's the part you played. You got to own it.
Yeah.
Because you were a contributor to it.
But yeah, drops the guard when you acknowledge that
Absolutely.
you had a role in it.
Number 4. After you say what you said, be a listener. I can't say this enough. We've talked about Imago Dei in episodes past. Hear me. We would be a much better culture, people, and society if people learned how to listen. But we're terrible at listening, and we're terrible at talking too much. We just talk, and we only listen. We never listen to understand. I know never's a big word, but I mean it. We never listen to understand. We just listen for the gap so that we can talk more. Listen to understand that autonomous human being had a perspective that you don't have. So they may have had a why behind their what that was understood to them that you need to understand. I'm not saying it's right, but conflict resolution has a lot to do with one's ability to listen. To listen, and go, okay, I hear you. You're wrong, and I don't know how you came to that conclusion, and I think your why behind what you did sucks. But I'm listening, and I'm hearing, and it's creating a degree of understanding. But be a listener, both. Both have got to be a listener. My God, Ruth and I, our conflicts are so much more quickly resolved now than they were back in our early 20s, early 30s for that matter. Why? Because we've learned to listen. Back then, I was such a doofus. I would just talk, and then Ruth would yell, and then I would heighten my voice, and then we'd storm out, and she'd squeal wheels out of the driveway, and I'd be left, wanting to be heard, but I didn't want to listen. It's a terrible cycle. Conflict resolution has a ton to do with just listening.
Have you put practical guardrails into that?
Oh, totes.
What do those look like?
That's Imago Dei. That's
Okay.
if Ruth's talking, I'm not allowed to speak. And then and we do that according to what's called juice cup. I can't sit here for 15 minutes while you berate me over all the things that I'm not. I get it. I already knew all that. You've reminded me. But here's the deal. But as it pertains to the offense that just happened that caused you hurt, give it to me in a juice cup, sweetie. I can't handle a whole Stanley cup. And what's up with the Stanley cups? Hey, I digress. I'm sorry, Beth.
She didn't like that.
The juice cup. That's a little orange juice, little cranberry, little grapefruit juice. Just give me what, and then listen. And then even pause before you respond. It's not like she comes up for air and then goes, okay. And then you're like, all right, just pause.
As to your first point,
Yeah. I can dismantle this. Okay. Then when you speak, I want to give 3 things. Speak the truth, not just the feeling. Speak the truth of what happened. Speak tactfully. Tactfully has a lot to do with tone. Nobody gave you a license to be a rage monster. Speak tactfully, and that has to do with your tone. Watch the volume of your voice. I don't care that you've been told, oh, you're just bombastic. Don't be. Doesn't help.
yeah,
Doesn't help. Just because you're emphatic and intense doesn't make it that you get to, that you're right because you're passionate. Tact is about tone, and aim for the target, meaning keep it focused on where the conflict happened, not all the 8 million character flaws you notice about the person.
target the topic.
Target the topic, Boots. Target the topic. And here's the deal. Here's the deal with with speaking when you're responding. This is on both sides. The clearest indicator that someone is not a listener is that they get good at being a gaslighter. So they're not listening to you. They're just waiting for a way to disarm and dismantle your argument by turning it back around on you. And gaslighters, are seldom. They don't start with asking God for wisdom. They don't start with any posture of humility. Gaslighters cannot handle being wrong, so they got to spin it that you're at fault for even causing them to say what they said in the first place. Or you got offended at something because you're so overly sensitive or weak in your own, yada, yada, yada. Gaslighting's a nuke bomb to any conflict resolution.
Yep.
All right, we're moving right along. We're almost done. This is supposed to be a short one. Last two.
I'm along for the ride.
Then acknowledge the problem and what you're going to do about it. This is called empathy. This is the part of the Imago Dei of going, here's what I heard you say.
Yep.
In the podcast recently, you and I were talking and you made a slight at me. Okay, let's say you were to say this to me, because that would be much more realistic.
Yeah, let's make it about like my birthday, for example.
Yeah, okay. That tasty cake that Beck brought to the party, actually, I'm only going to create a conflict here, so I'm very sorry, Beck. I was going to take a shot at that tasty cake a few weeks ago. Here's what you do. So if you come to me with an offense and hey, I said something, yada, 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 what I'm going to say to you is, hey, buddy, I acknowledge what you said and I own that. Here's what I'm going to do about it. I'm really quick-tongued and I can say things that sound humorous within my own echo chamber, but they're not humorous to you. And so I'm just going to work at not being so, cynical and flip with the way that I talk. And that's the way that I think that I'm going to remedy, because I don't want to cause you an offense, because sometimes I can project me on you like you think through like the same way that I do. And don't say that in a passive aggressive way. Like, hey, Boots, just because you're weak, buddy, you know what I'm going to do. Yeah. I'm going to govern my tongue around you because you're thin-skinned. That's not working on the problem. Working on the problem is real empathy for, here's how I hurt you, here's the problem that caused it, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Mm-hmm. And then reconcile. Say, hey, can we allow this to be the line that we cross over, and hey, let it be gone. Let's not bring it up again. I'm not going to hold it against you, and please forgive me. Yep. That's reconciliation. I think that was 7. I think that was like 7 things. Anyway, that's practical conflict resolution. We don't need to recap, do we?
Nope.
Come on, I'll recap real quick. Initiate, ask God for wisdom, consider your part, number 3. 4, listen, be a listener. Number 5, speak truth tactfully according to tone, stay on target. Number 6, talk about the problem that you're going to work on. And then lastly, reconcile. Booyah!
I like it. Problem resolved. That's a good one.
We did work there, buddy.
You did. I was just along for the ride, but
I love you sitting shotgun.
I don't know. I almost did like
I don't want to travel without you, buddy.
Oh, thank you.
Travel partners.
Means a lot.
We should take this sucker cross country.
There you go. And it means a lot that you are listening and or watching at home. Go ahead and follow us if you don't already on Spotify or Apple. Check us out on Instagram as well at Simplexity Podcast. See you guys next time.
Love you guys.